Hi everybody, and welcome. This session is entitled Designing Custom Field Shows for Marching Band. Before we dive into the content, allow me to say a few words about myself. First, I've been a band director for 29 years. I taught in the public schools of Mesa, Arizona, at Westwood High School for 7 years, had a great experience there, and I've spent the balance of that time at the university level. I've been at Northern Illinois University for the last 16 years. We're about an hour west of Chicago. There, I conduct the Husky Marching Band, Division I football, so performed at bowl games, performed at the Orange Bowl all over the country. And I also conduct the Wind Symphony as well. Full disclosure, I am a show designer and a composer. So I compose music for concert band, concerti for brass and saxophone and all manner of band music, as well as marching band shows. So the concepts I'm going to share with you later in the session are drawn from all of that experience. I've judged bands across the country, including state championships in California, Arizona, and all over the Midwest. I'm also a drum corps guy. I marched with the Phantom Regiment, I taught with the Cavaliers, have been a consultant with several other corps. So I'm really bringing to you, again, 29 years or more of experience in the marching arts. So let's dive in. Believe it or not, the first and foremost goal of a marching band show is music education. So before we even talk about designing a show, the first question should be, what do you want your students to learn? I mean, for all the time and money we put into marching band, our kids should learn something. And that goes equally true at the college level, high school level, anywhere else you're marching. For all the time and effort and money, let's make sure the students are learning something. That could start with musical goals. I remember designing a custom show for an ensemble, and the director had this incredible vision for integrating the marching band into the music curriculum. His idea was, hey, I want to spend time for the whole school year on one certain composer. We're going to play music from that composer in our field show. All of the concert bands will play at least one piece per concert from this composer. We're going to study, this composer's life and works and where they're from and what they're doing. What a great idea. Others of you for your marching program may want to focus on percussion. What do you want your percussion students to learn? What do you want your students to learn visually or interpretively? What's the educational purpose of a marching band show? And honestly, I would love to see more of that. Again, I'm all in with the marching arts. I have been most of my life. And because I care about it, let's make sure we're teaching. Let's make sure our students are learning. Not just getting through a show, not just chasing a rating or a trophy. I mean, those things don't last. But teaching, that has an impact for a student's whole life. Let's make sure there's an educational rationale for the marching band and the marching band show. The next thing you need to consider is the purpose of the show. Here's what I mean by that. Are you trying to appeal just to your Friday night football crowd? If so, that's fine, but it changes the way we design the show. Or are you planning to be a competitive band? And certainly most people do both, right? There's the hometown football crowd, and then you also compete with that same show. But then we need to talk about what level of competition. If you're just planning on attending a few regional shows or a few local shows, within an hour or two of home, cool, no problem. That's one level of design. But if you're planning to go all the way to BOA Grand Nationals to compete with the big boys and girls, that's a very different conversation in terms of the content of the show. There really are such things as expectations, trends, fashions in the marching arts. And so if you're wanting to compete at a national level, we need to talk about how those trends, fashions, hidden compulsories, if you will, fit into your show design. If you ignore those things competitively, you do so at your peril, right? But again, if your goal is, hey, we want to put on a great show for our hometown crowd Friday night, and then we want to visit a couple local shows, that changes the design conversation. So this is something you need to talk about with your band parents, with your students themselves, with your music administration, with your principal. Make sure everybody understands what the goal of the marching band show is. All right, let's keep talking about custom show design. The goal of all the shows is to integrate every performer. Everybody on the field should have their moment in the sun, all right, their moment of being in the focus. Right, so that requires some planning. There should be, a woodwind moment, a brass moment, a low brass moment, certainly a percussion moment, front ensemble moment, color guard moment if you use a color guard. So that's one of the goals of show design, is to figure out how to make the most of everything on the field, right? Involve everybody on the field. Then you also want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward. If you've got a great trumpet soloist, let's make sure we use him or her. If you've got a great saxophone section, let's make sure we use that section. Bottom line, better planning makes for a better season. Better planning makes for a more enjoyable season, right? Nobody wants to get halfway through the season and realize that, oh, this transition doesn't work at all. And I've experienced that as a performer and many times as a consultant and a clinician. Maybe one set of people design, the opener, somebody else designed the closer, and when you get to trying to hook those together, you realize it doesn't work. That can all be avoided with better planning. So that's one of the takeaways of today. Better planning makes for a better season. Better how? Better in every way. A better product on the field, a better process. Everybody can be a little bit more relaxed. You can have a much more predictable rehearsal schedule. It's just better for everybody. So as the director, as the designer, you need to solve all those problems in the off season so that when you actually start putting kids on the field, everything works. That's the goal. All right, so let's talk about the show selection process. Well, first, you really need 6 to 8 months to plan a successful field show. That doesn't mean that's the only thing you're doing during that time, but you really need to give yourself that long of a window to select music, plan a schedule, again, decide on the purpose of the show and put it all together. Really, your first priority is selecting music. There's all sorts of reasons to do so, but the bottom line is the music is the backbone of the show. Right? That's really important to think about. You also need to think realistically about your schedule. How often does your band rehearse? Do you have sectionals? Do you have help? If you're a one-man show or a one-woman show, trying to do everything by yourself, I would advise caution. Be very realistic about what you ask your students to do. Again, the only time marching band gets crazy is when we reach too far, and then we're making ourselves and our students crazy trying to pull something off that in hindsight was probably too much. So realistic goals. Make sure you're planning for the band you actually teach. Not the one you wish you taught, not the one you had 5 years ago. Certainly we can be building towards the goals of the program in terms of the marching band, but be realistic. Be realistic. What can your kids actually do? Here's a good example. If you don't know anything about jazz, don't program a swing show. That's not going to end well. Or conversely, if jazz is the strength of your program, okay, well, maybe we can put that on the field successfully. Be realistic. Again, 6 to 8 months lead time. Plan for real life. You're going to lose some rehearsals to rain. You're going to lose some rehearsals to snow, depending on where you are. Weather can be a factor. If you build your entire show around one really strong performer and that kid gets sick, now what? There's going to be school assemblies. There's going to be bus drills. Life is going to happen. Plan your show and your season in a way that allows for real life. Again, the goal is to be calm and relaxed and positive with your students. And that's a lot easier to do if you set realistic goals. Let's keep talking about this show selection idea. It really does start with music. As I said before, music's the backbone of the show, and that's actually a quote from a DCI Hall of Fame drill designer. About 10 years ago, I did an interview with Gary Chops Chapinski in the Instrumentalist magazine, and he talked about this idea at length. That, if you have a moment, look that interview up. Chops had some great things to say about pacing, show design, music selection, but the bottom line is it all starts with the music. That really is the backbone of your show. More on that later when we talk about, custom shows versus original music versus arrangements, that sort of thing. But that's the first thing to keep in mind. A couple other thoughts about assessing your program. Again, be realistic. Be realistic. If you've got a smoking hot woodwind section, it might make sense to show them off with some technical runs. Conversely, if you have only 2 low brass players, probably not the year to program the 1812 overture on the field, right? It's just not going to work. So be realistic and think critically about your own program. I actually developed a tool to help with that. It's an exhaustive self-assessment for your whole program. Breaks down every single section, asks about possibilities of soloists, asks about your staff, asks about the training of your students, the training of your staff, your own background. I'd be happy to send that to you. If you're interested in this self-assessment, send me an email. The address is on the screen there. Just send me an email and I'll send you the PDF self-assessment. No cost, no problem. So, since music is the backbone of the show, let's talk about 4 different options for music selection. The first, really simple, just stock arrangements right off the shelf. Log on to your favorite, music retailer, online retailer, go to your local music store, and just buy whatever's commercially available. That's actually a pretty good option for a lot of bands. We'll talk more about that later. Or you could, option 2, is you can select original music composed specifically for marching band. Again, full disclosure, I have done that. I have published shows with Alfred Publications, GPG Publications. Lots of those things available. Again, all sorts of companies do that sort of thing now. All sorts of composers specialize in that. That's a great option for a lot of bands. Okay. Third option is a custom arrangement. That's when you hire somebody like me and literally select any music in the world, put it together in your story arc, put it together in your timeline, and construct a show specifically for your band, but using existing music. The fourth option, again, me and many, many others, is to design or compose a show specifically for your ensemble. Again, we're going to talk about all 4 of these options in just a moment. There's advantages and disadvantages for each one. All right, stay tuned. We'll break those down. All right, let's talk about those 4 options. The first, buying stock arrangements, is actually a good choice for a lot of bands, especially if you're not super serious about competition. Okay, off-the-shelf arrangements are the cheapest option. You know the music's going to work. There's no copyright issues. There's no licensing issues. You just buy the tune, hand it out, and away you go. The downside, a little bit different. The first issue is just instrumentation. A stock arrangement might call for a great trombone solo, and if you don't even have a trombone, well, that's a problem. Okay. With stock arrangements, the writing of the percussion parts varies greatly. And that's as diplomatically as I can put it. Some are great, they make a lot of sense, the drumming patterns make sense, the sticking work. In some other cases, that is not true. The sticking patterns are weird or even like impossible or just illogical. The scoring of the front ensemble may or may not make a lot of sense on a published arrangement. Another concern with an off-the-shelf arrangement is simply the arrangement itself. It may or may not fit the rise and fall of your dramatic arc. It may or may not fit your storyline. Again, if you're just thinking Friday night football band, that's a great way to go. It's the cheapest option. If you're thinking competitively, there's also a concern about duplication at competition. Again, for a lot of bands, this is the cheapest, most effective way to go. Nothing wrong with it. Just understand the drawbacks. The second choice is original shows designed for marching band. This can be a great option. As I mentioned, I've done this sort of thing and published them. There's all sorts of composers that publish marching band shows in addition to their concert band music. There's all sorts of companies that specialize in, original marching band shows where, again, the dramatic arc is built in. There's definitive high points and low points. There's solo options. There's chamber music options. All those things are great. The downside with that are the same concerns as the stock arrangements. The soloist that somebody else picks may or may not fit your band. The instrumentation that they pick may or may not fit your band. The quality of the percussion writing, again, varies greatly. Some, off-the-shelf show packages have logical percussion parts that make a lot of sense and highlight the music. Others are kind of busy and notey and may or may not fit your drum line. They certainly may not fit your front ensemble. And a quick word about electronics. I mean, electronics are here to stay in the competitive world. If you're using them, make sure you have the tech skills and the audio equipment to pull it off. I've seen way too many bands buy a show that's hinges on the electronics, but they don't have the sound system or the equalization or the people to run it to actually make it work. Okay. One more thought on this idea of prepackaged marching band shows. For a lot of people, that's actually a really good way to go. The drill is going to make sense. Typically, they come with guard work and a video on how to teach it. They come with body choreography and how to teach it. If you're not really into the marching band thing, that's a great place to get started. Okay, you have a product that's going to work. It's gonna work, right? And you don't have to create all that stuff. Again, the downside competitively is duplication at shows. None of that stuff is going to be particularly cutting edge. It's designed to be right up the middle. If that's what you need for your band, go for it. If you're looking for some sort of competitive edge, well, maybe we consider option number 3 or 4. So speaking of, here's option number 3, as we discussed before, a custom arrangement of existing music specifically for your band. I do a lot of this sort of thing, and it's actually really fun. The first thing that's cool is that the whole world of music is at your disposal, mostly. We'll come back to that. But, imagine being able to choose from the best orchestral music, the best film music, the best, Broadway music, the best choral music to craft a storyline, a dramatic arc, a rise and fall. That's pretty cool, right? You have lots and lots of options with a custom arrangement. The other thing is, if I'm writing for your band, I'm writing for your band. I mentioned earlier the self-assessment. We're going to do that. We're going to identify the best possible candidates for soloists, the best possible candidates for chamber music. We're going to talk in detail about the drum line, the front ensemble. I want to know all the tools available to me from your band. If you've got a great saxophone section, we're going to feature that saxophone section. If you've got a great euphonium soloist, we're going to feature that soloist. You name it, we'll figure out how to use it, and we'll select music that takes advantage of those strengths of your program. Same thing for the drum writing. Okay, typically custom arrangements, somebody like me writes the woodwind and brass parts, somebody else who's a percussion specialist writes the drum line and front ensemble parts. And again, if there's an electronics package, typically that's even a third person doing that. I assure you that's how it's done at the highest levels. Okay, there's a whole team of designers that cooperate and collaborate to pull all this together. More on that later. For the custom arrangements, there's a couple of things to think about. And as we said before, here's one of the concerns. Copyright, right? If somebody else wrote it, they or their publisher own the rights to that music. And they may or may not be willing to release those rights to you. Probably most of you are familiar with Tresona Music Licensing. They've got a great website, tresona.com. You can log in there, create an account for free, and find out if whatever music you're thinking about is even available for copyright, and get an idea of at what price. So if somebody else wrote the music, make sure you can get the rights, and then find out if you can afford the rights. If you're doing rock and roll tunes from 20 years ago, might be as little as $150, $180. If you're doing the latest, coolest Broadway show, it could be a lot more. So, figure in licensing rights as you're planning your show. If you have the best concept in the world, but you simply can't afford it, maybe you put that on hold for a few years till typically the price on the rights comes down. Just something to think about in terms of that. Timeline. It realistically could take 6 months to 8 months to custom design a show. That's phone calls, that's evaluating the ensemble, that's picking music, that's crafting a dramatic arc, that's talking to your drill designer, your percussion designer, your guard people, trying to make sure that we can actually pull off what you want to have happen and to have it done in time for the first rehearsal, right? There's way too many stories floating around the marching arts of, we hired this big shot designer and we got to the first day of band camp and we had no music and no drill. That's not cool, right? Give yourself enough time to plan all this out and figure out how to do a custom arrangement that fits your group to a T, but we also have time to get all the business parts done. Let's move on to the fourth option, the idea of creating a custom original show for your band, an original composition. Again, a lot of people do this sort of thing. It can be really cool because then the creative world is wide open. You know, if we need to expand this phrase for the sake of the visual program, we can, or if we need to contract that phrase for the sake of the percussion program, we can. That makes it really cool. Original music is often combined with custom arrangements so that from the audience's perspective, there's something familiar they can, you know, kind of hold on to with their ear, but maybe a lot of original transitions, or maybe, you know, the arranged tune, the familiar tune leads to some compositional ideas that are developed further into the show. All these things are really effective. All of these things are really common. If you listen to, you know, any of the top drum corps or any of the top competitive high school bands, you're going to hear, in a lot of cases, a combination of arrangements and original music. The timelines are much the same, 6 to 8 months. You don't have to pay licensing fees for original music, but then you do have to pay a composer to create that original music. As I mentioned before, normally one person composes for woodwinds and brass, and another person composes or arranges for drumline and front ensemble. And if you have an electronics package, then a third person is doing that. Building this team of designers, people you know, people you trust, people that are going to get the job done on time, that's, you know, a lot of the secret to success in our business, just like anything. All right. Let's keep talking about this idea of designing a custom field show. Once we've done all that work with the music, now we need to start putting together the team of people to make it all happen together. As I mentioned before, if you buy a box show, right, a pre-designed show that, you know, they just adapt to your band, all those things are going to work together. If you're designing a custom arrangement or an original composition, we need a team of people to put all that together. We've got to make sure that first at the arrival moments, right, the impact moments, that the drill is appropriately staged. You know, if you've got a brass feature, well, hey, they need to be towards the front. If you've got a woodwind feature, especially if you're using props or anything like that, we need to consider all that stuff. The best shows, and again, the way it's done at the highest level, is there's a small room full of people, a music designer, percussion designer, drill designer, guard designer, and probably an effect coordinator as well, all sitting down, all talking about these things with you, the band director, you know, trying to figure out how to make it all work together. That's the ideal, that you have a team of people that work together to make all the elements come together. Some of my most fond memories professionally have been those type of situations where I'm sitting down with all these brilliant creative people trying to figure out, okay, Mr. Band Director or Miss Band Director, you know, you've got this great trumpet soloist, we want to feature them here, and then while that trumpet solo is happening, this equipment change in the guard needs to happen. So how do we stage that? How do we hide that? How do we detract the audience's attention from the guard change and keep it on the soloist? Okay, well, we're going to do this, that, or the other thing. Okay, great. Well, where's the drum line and what are they doing? Oh, they're too far away. Okay, we need to extend this music phrase by 12 counts so the drum line can literally get back to the center of the field for their feature moment. To me, that's really fun. And yes, that means I am a big band nerd. Then again, I've been a band nerd for like 40 some odd years, so I'm used to it. Anyway, if you as the director are trying to do all those elements yourself, first, my hat's off to you, good luck. It is possible. Some of the best people in our business do that. They literally create all those elements themselves. But I assure you that is a rarity. I remember working with a band here in Illinois, and the director literally asked me that. He goes, well, such and so big shot band director writes his own music and writes his own drill. Should I be doing that? No. No. Okay. Again, some people are just exceptionally gifted and talented and have that kind of time to invest. For most of us, we need to rely on the expertise of a team to pull these things off. So think really carefully, how do we pull all this together? The converse is almost always a formula for a mess on the field. You know, the drum person is writing drum things all by themselves without thinking about the total picture, without thinking about what the woodwinds are doing, without thinking about the drill demands. He or she just writes this cool drum book. And then likewise, the drill person writes this really cool drill thing, but they're not thinking about the music. They're not thinking about the overall effect. They're not thinking about the fact that, hey, the woodwinds have this really challenging 16th note run. Hey, let's have them going 4 to 5 backwards on the 20-yard line. Not good, all right? You've got to be, whether it's you as the director or whether you have a show coordinator or design coordinator or whatever, but somebody needs to be thinking about the whole picture. How does this all fit together? Again, this applies for competitive bands, but even if you're just looking to do a Friday night field show, it should be a great Friday night field show. There should be moments where clearly you want the audience to stand up and clap, and other moments where you want them to go, oh, that was nice. Right? You got to build those things in. If you don't make it happen, it's not going to happen. If you don't plan for success, good luck with that. All right, let's continue with this idea of a design team. As you're selecting those people, make sure you get proven educators, right? The most creative people in the world, but that you can't count on or they can't relate to kids, that's a problem, right? Proven educators. Proven track record of success at whatever level you're aspiring to. Again, if you want a great Friday night football band, that's a lot of people, could help you get there. If you're looking for competitive success at a regional or national level, well, there's a smaller group of people that have been there and done that, and those are the people you need to seek out. Again, not to turn this into an infomercial, but I'd be happy to talk with you about how to find some of those people, and I'd be happy to introduce you to my team. Again, every one of the people I work with fit this to a T. They're all great educators. They are reliable. That's a huge element in selecting your design team. Again, the most creative person in the world that can't get you the drill on time or the music on time, that's no good. All right? So think about the qualities that you value most and make sure that the people you're working with, especially if you're hiring them, make sure they fit that bill. Speaking of bills, let's talk about contracts, okay? Contracts are a great idea. Verbal agreements are one thing, and I suppose technically they're enforceable in court, but contracts are much better. Contracts help friends stay friends. Contracts let everybody know about timelines, financial expectations, payment deadlines, rewriting fees, all that stuff, okay? Contracts are a really good way to go because you as the director, you want to know what you're getting. I assure you your principal is going to want to know, or your band boosters are going to want to know, hey, what are we paying all this money for and when do we get it, okay? Those are the things you need to think about in a contract. And again, I'd be happy to provide you a sample of my contract. Email address is on the screen. Just shoot me an email and I'll send you a contract to consider. Take the best, leave the rest, but you're welcome to use that as a template. Timelines, deadlines, both for drill, music, drums, whatever, and financial obligations. Those are the really important things on a contract. Well, thank you very much for listening. I hope this presentation on custom field shows got some creative juices flowing, got some wheels turning in your head. Again, I'm happy to talk with you more about these options. You can check out my website, www.thomasboo.com, or you're welcome to send me an email, thomas.boo.music@gmail.com, and I'm happy to talk with you about any of these options. Thank you so much.